Morning.
Good morning.
Wake everybody up again. Everybody kind of got all drowsy. It's gray and we haven't seen the sun in days, so. The other day I was on Facebook and I read one of those little posters with the inspirational quotes, and the one said, "Real growth begins at the end of your comfort zone." The following week, Pastor Fran happened to say something about comfort zone in his sermon as well. It kind of surprised me, so I was like, this must be a hint what my message should be about. So I decided I wanted to do a message about stepping out of your comfort zone. Have you ever noticed that when God calls on someone to do great things, He's frequently calling them out of their comfort zone? Notice in the reading that John did this morning that Moses tried to come up with all kinds of excuses not to be the one to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. He came up with all kinds of excuses. "Are you sure you want me?" He first said, "Why me?" Then he said, "But I'm not good with words. I don't speak well." And finally God told him, "Well, let your brother do the talking, and you just give him the words to speak." But his brother blew it so bad that Moses decided, well, maybe I should do this for myself because he's really not that good at speaking this stuff. So God has a way of taking us out of our comfort zone in order to do His work. He took Moses out, and Moses questioned him left and right. "Are you sure you want me?" Most of us would think, wow, if God appeared to me and told me to do something, I better get off my butt and do it. But you never know. He takes us out of our comfort zone so far that we come up with excuses. Oh, there's got to be somebody better than this for this job. So I decided on this message, and I didn't know what scripture I wanted to use for reference. I had the little Moses piece, but I went home that evening and started to do my homework for my Bible class. And what's the first thing I had to read? It was a story of Gideon in Judges. Well, this had to be a hint. I was like, comfort zone, Gideon, okay. God's telling me what to preach about this week. Kind of made it easy for me. Who here is familiar with Gideon? Not too many? Only a few? I'll be honest, I wasn't real familiar with Gideon. I was like, wow, this is kind of new to me, because anybody who's ever read the Old Testament, it's not easy reading. Especially if you're reading one of the older versions, like thous and thats and thee and thy and all of the hasts and hath, and it's difficult to read. So I have a nice little book that breaks it down for you, kind of not really the Old Testament, but breaks down nicely, so you can actually read the story of Gideon. And the book of Judges is right after Joshua and the Israelites conquered Canaan. Unfortunately, without any sort of central ruling, the Israelites started to do their own thing, as they repeatedly did in Judges, about 7 times. Drift away, God brings in our enemies, conquers and starts to defeat them, and then He raises a hero, and they defeat them back and send them on their way, and then Israel started to do it again. I mean, they would go astray from what God commanded them by not worshiping properly or even building idols to other gods from the Canaanites, who they let some stay in their area. So God would allow a foreign army to come into Israel, stir things up, and then He would select someone to overthrow the enemy, and things would be as they should for a little while, but then He'd have to do it again. Like I said, this happened 6 times in the book of Judges. So for 7 years, the Midianites would raid Israel right about the time of the harvest. They would wait until the harvest time, and they'd come down in, and they'd steal what they needed and leave. Now picture this. Picture like Alibaba, but with 40,000 thieves coming in, chasing the Israelites into the hills, and then leaving with their food, their women, their animals, and destroying their cities for 7 consecutive years. Every year you do your harvest, and these people just come in and take it. This time God decided to raise up an unlikely hero, though. This time He chose a man who was not too brave. Pay attention to the word "if" in this story, because you'll hear it a lot. Because just like Moses, with his, "what if they don't listen to me," Gideon did much the same. Gideon was hiding in a wine press, which is normally where you stomp on the grapes to make wine. He was hiding in there trying to thresh his wheat, which is not an easy task in a little hole, threshing wheat. They usually have a big floor open for it. But he's trying to do it in this little hole, because he was afraid the Midianites would see him and come down and take his food. This was one man threshing wheat, worried about this army coming down and taking his food, which really, when you think about it, not that likely for one guy. But he was that scared. And an angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Now we have a man hiding in a hole, and somebody says to him, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Picture peeking up out of your hole going, "Are you nuts? You out of your mind? You can't be talking to me." Now Gideon, who was of the weakest clan of, I'm going to butcher the names because it is the Old Testament, Manasseh. I hope I got that right. Did I get that close? Anybody who can say? Okay, cool. And he was the meekest of his family, thinking, "You've got to have the wrong person. There's no way you're calling me a mighty warrior." But the angel told Gideon that he would be with Gideon, and that Gideon would strike down the Midianites. Now Gideon's got to really be thinking he's crazy. He's like, I'm hiding in a hole to thresh some wheat, and you think I'm going to strike down an enemy army? Gideon replied with, now wait for it, right out of the Old Testament. If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that is really you talking to me. Now please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you. So here's Gideon's first if. I'm going to place an offering before you. If you really want me, give me a sign. So Gideon prepared a goat for sacrifice and was instructed by the angel to place them all on a rock. Gideon did so, and the angel touched the meat and the bread with his staff, and fire flared from the rock and consumed the sacrifice. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd be pretty convinced. I was like, yep, this guy's an angel. He whacked a rock with a stick and flames just engulfed everything. I'm good. Gideon immediately panicked and said, alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. He was thinking that the angel was sent to kill him, because that was pretty common belief back then. You saw an angel, I'm in trouble. But the angel put his mind at ease, and that night the angel instructed Gideon to use one of his father's bulls and demolish his father's altar to Baal, a Canaanite god, because his father even built an altar to another god. And Gideon was afraid, so he waited until nightfall to do it. He knew he'd better listen to this angel. Maybe he'd get whacked with a stick. I don't know, but I'd listen too. But he was too afraid to do it during the day, even though God had spoken to him. So he waited until night, and he snuck out there with his father's bull, pulled down the statue. And later the townspeople in the morning were so upset, and they found out it was Gideon. They wanted to kill Gideon. But his father stuck up for him and said, if Baal is upset with him, let him defend himself. He's supposedly a god. Let him take up his beef with Gideon. Otherwise, you guys back off. Obviously, Baal needs some help. And he's not a true god then. Well, after all this, God raised up, or after all the Midianites and Amalekites and other eastern tribes crossed the Jordan River and set up camp nearby. And God raised up an army of the northern tribes together to join Gideon. And they all came to him to follow him into battle. But guess what Gideon did again? Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand. If he pushed out he gave God a test. He put out a piece of wool and said, hey, if this is wet with dew, and when I get up in the morning but the ground is dry, then I know it's true. Well, apparently getting the staff on the rock wasn't good enough for him. He needed another test. Well, when he woke up the next day, he picked up the fleece, wrung it out, and filled a bowl full of water, but the ground around was dry. But guess what Gideon did again? That still wasn't good enough for Gideon. He still wasn't convinced. Do you think he was afraid of stepping out of his comfort zone just a little bit? He said, do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece, but this time make the fleece dry and let the ground be covered with dew. Now, I give Gideon credit. He may have been a coward of a man, but he's pretty brave because he's questioning God. He's scared of an army, but he's questioning God like 3 times now. So, that night, God did so. Only the fleece was dry and all the ground was covered with dew. He asked him to do it again, a 3rd time. So, he may not have said if this time, but he might as well have said it. If it's really you, can you leave the fleece dry and the ground wet around it? Can we kind of work this out here? Because, I need a few more proof. I need a little more proof before I lead an army. So, after this, to make a long story short, Gideon agreed to lead the army. But now it was God's turn to say if. God decided, you want to say if? No problem. God decided that if he let all of these Israelites, this whole Israelite army, defeat the enemies, they would claim credit for the win. They'd be like, we raised a mighty army and defeat the Israelites. And God's like, I'm getting credit for this one, buddy. So, probably not in those terms, huh? At least I hope not, but maybe, who knows? So God said to Gideon, release anybody who wanted to leave. Anyone who wants to leave, let them go. Now, if I were leading an army and God said that to me, I'd be like, excuse me? What? Okay. So Gideon said, hey, who wants to leave? Who's scared? 22,000 left. That left only 10,000 to face an army of 40,000. But God decided that was still too many. It's like, nope. So he told them, take them down to drink from the river. Those who cupped the water in their hands were to stay and fight, But those who got down on their knees and put their faces to the water were to be released. Now that would seem like a weird request to me. I'd be like, really? We're basing it on how they drink water? But okay, you're God. I'm listening now. You did the fleece thing and you burned my sacrifice. So Gideon went to fight with 300 men. Do you think Gideon was a little out of his comfort zone now? He's about to lead an army, hardly what I would call an army, like a battalion of men against 40,000 to defeat them. Now, this is where I'm going to do something really mean, and I'm not going to tell you what happened. But if you want to read about it for yourself. You could read it in Judges 7, 8 through 25. Because you're going to have to go home and do homework if you want to hear what happened. So, I know it's mean, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now, to move on to the moral of the message, though. God is calling us all out of our comfort zone. We all have needs and wants that we raise up to God and we ask of Him every week. Most of us, even if we don't raise a prayer request, we have a thought in our head that we're saying, oh, I kind of want this prayer request. Some people don't feel comfortable raising their hands to raise a prayer request, or some people just keep some to themselves, or even our unspoken prayer requests. We're all raising something up. But we don't hear His voice in response because we just don't believe our ears. We want to put the fleece out, and we want to say, God, can you make the ground dry, or whatever our little test can be. Because we don't want to listen, because His answer is leading us out of our comfort zone. We're scared to step out of our comfort zone. We want our prayers answered, but we want them on our terms. God, you're God. You can do anything. You can answer my prayer on my terms. But He doesn't have to. He's God. He can say, no, I'm answering this on my terms. Perhaps you're asking for financial help from God because you're barely getting by. But you're afraid to look for a new job because you're comfortable where you are. Because you're in your comfort zone. You're like, wow, I'm really not making enough money, but I could look for a new job, but I like where I'm at, and I'm good at what I do, and I'm just going to stay where I'm at. Or maybe you're afraid to give up something in order to get what God is trying to offer you. We all talk about how when God closes a door, He opens another one. But how often is it that He doesn't close the other door? We just have too much junk in our hands to fit through the door. We just can't fit through that door He left open because we want to take all of our junk with us because we're comfortable with our junk. But we don't fit. We got all this junk in our hands and the door's right there. We can't see over our stack of junk. Oh, there is a door there, but I got all this stuff I can't fit through the door because we're comfortable with it. We don't want to put it down. We make excuses why we can't accomplish something. Maybe it's something like going back to school or even getting healthier. We like our excuses. We love our excuses because they allow us to stay in our comfort zone. Oh, I want to go back to school, but I work too many hours and maybe I can't pay for it, or I wasn't good in school the first time and I don't want to go back to school because we're comfortable. We like to stay nice and comfy and cozy in our comfort zone. And we like what's familiar because new things are scary. We certainly don't like scary. I'll be honest, I start a new job tomorrow and I'm a little frightened of it. I'm out of my comfort zone, but got to do what I got to do. So what I'm asking you today is to open up all of the options to God. Lay it all on the table. Lay all your cards out on the table. Say, God, I really am requesting this from you, but I'm willing to go the way you want me to. I'm willing to step out of my comfort zone. Now, prepare for things to be scary for a while, because you've stepped away from your comfort zone and it's scary. All our little creature comforts, whatever it is that we like to lean back on and rely on, whether it be the job we're working and we want a new job, but we're scared to step away and step back out there and interview again because interviewing is not fun. Or maybe you want financial stability and you need help, but that stability requires some sacrifices. I really want this, but I got to do this and I got to get more comfortable because it takes us out of our comfort zone. Prepare for things to hurt for a little while until they get better, but they will get better if you place it in God's hands, but you place complete trust in God's hand. Because, like I said, true growth comes at the end of your comfort zone. That's where true growth lies, even with God. And He proved it throughout the Bible, with Moses, with Gideon, with countless others. Think about the Israelites during Exodus. They were supposed to conquer Canaan, but He sent scouts out to look at what city? Jericho. And only 2 of the scouts came back and said, yep, we can do it. The rest said, nope, we can't do it. It's too much for us. God sent them back into the desert for 40 years to wander around because they were afraid to step out of their comfort zone and trust God and do what needed to be done. So God is there for us if we're willing to listen, willing to make the sacrifices, or willing just to not be as comfortable as we want to be. So all I ask is let your faith be bigger than your fears. Just let your faith be that much bigger than what you're afraid of. Amen.